Hello, third grade. I apologize. I have a bit of a stuffy nose, so just bear with me if I sound a little funny. So, as you heard with the assembly last week, we are having a Leap into Learning contest. So, for every weekly instructional lesson or will that you complete, you will get your name on a frog, and your frog will leap into our pond, and you will be entered to win a prize. So, this week's weekly instructional lesson is for social studies. So, in social studies this week, you're going to complete lesson 21.1. It's on ancient Africa, the Kush Nation. And you'll be doing that Monday and Tuesday, going through the lesson and working on the assignment sheet that you will turn in. Then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I have the will. So, this is not a grade. It's to enhance your learning. So, if you choose that you do not want your brain to grow, or you don't have time to do the extra work, that is your choice. You are not being graded. This is just to enhance your learning with the bonus of if you complete it fully, you get your name into a prize drawing. So just keep that in mind. But this assignment, the Monday, Tuesday, that is required. Um, that is graded, but the will is not. So let's take a look at the will. If you click on this lesson, it'll open. So Science and Social Studies, third grade. This is social studies, and it's for week 4. Your learning target. I can describe several characteristics of the Nile River. So, this week we learned about the natural, human, and capital resources of ancient Africa. What kind of resources pictured below? Do 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 do. Do 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 do. It is the Nile River, a natural resource. So it is a major north-flowing river in northeastern Africa. It is regarded as the longest river in the world. So for our Explore section, you are going to read the Nile on page 4 of this week's lesson to receive an overview. So I'm going to open that up, and this won't link to the specific page, so you have to go to it. So you can either use the arrows to get to page 4, or you can click on the Nile. So the northern section of the Nile flows almost entirely through desert from northern Sudan, known as the Kingdom of Kush, into Egypt, a country whose civilization has depended on the river since ancient times. What else did the Nile provide for the ancient Egyptians? So what would a major body of water provide to people who, this was many, 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 many years ago, so there was no Walmarts to go to, no grocery stores or gas stations. Everything had to be collected on their own. So reeds called papyrus grew alongside of the Nile. The Egyptians made paper and boats from these reeds. It also gave them food, and they used spears and nets to catch fish. They also used the nets to catch birds that flew close to the surface of the water, and it helped with trade, so people would travel along the river up and down to distribute goods. And the Nile was the quickest and easiest way to travel from place to place. So again, this is ancient times. There are no highways and cars, so travel was a bit difficult. All right, and unfortunately, of course, there are 2 links that are broken. However, Geography and the Nile is available, and this is the Watch Egypt and the Nile. Nope, 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 nope. Scratch that, reverse it. There's a little video here that you can watch, and you can learn about the Nile, Upper and Lower Egypt, fertile land, flooding, building material, transportation, seasons of the Nile, and fun facts about the Nile. This may be helpful in a little bit, and I'll tell you why. So next is watch Egypt and the Nile River on page 5 of this week's lesson to complement your reading. So I'm already on page 4. I'm going to click the arrow to get to page 5. So watch the video and do the self-check. Then interact with these maps of the Nile River to bring your learning full circle. So these maps are interactive. So here's a map of ancient Egypt with all major cities, pyramids, and temples. So you can check out all the different things it's labeled. Here's an interactive map of Egypt. This is modern Egypt, and it gives you directions on how you can zoom in and out. Here's a map of Egypt around 1450 BC. BC means before Christ. This is many an eon ago. This is an aerial or sky view of the Nile and the Nile Delta. And that'll be that. So engage and explore, which we just walked through, is your Wednesday assignment. Thursday, you have explain and evaluate. So explain, what 5 things did the Nile provide for the ancient Egyptians? Hint, page 4 of this week's lesson. I just read it to you. Hint, 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 hint. Evaluate, check your understanding of the Nile River by taking this quiz. And this is where I said that reading could come in handy, because this quiz is from this reading that we just looked at. So you can go back and get some answers if you need to, but we already know what's the longest river in the world? The Nile. We read that in our main reading. So you can take a little quiz, check your understanding. Then on Friday, you have a little fun activity. This is called a foldable, and I forgot to put the link in, so I guess I have to do that, Miss Tori. All right, so a foldable is an interactive note. So you're going to read the passage. It is just 1 page in length. I'm going to pull that up for you. Let me pause. All right, so the Nile River. The Nile River is the longest river in the world. It is over 4,000 miles long. It is shaped like the lotus flower, which is often depicted in Egyptian art. The Nile is located in Africa and runs into the cities that were very important to the Egyptian people. The Nile is surrounded on all 4 sides by natural barriers. These barriers protect the people living along the Nile's fertile riverbanks. The north was the Mediterranean Sea, the east desert, Red Sea, south mountains, west desert. These barriers isolated the Egyptians and allowed them to develop a unique and distinct culture. People started to live around the area of the Nile River around 5,000 years ago. If it wasn't for the Nile, people would not be able to live in the area. There is very little rain, and without the Nile, Egypt would be a barren desert. The Nile provided many gifts to the people living nearby. They were able to use the Nile for transportation and food. The reeds that grew along the Nile were used to make papyrus, an ancient type of Egyptian paper. The rich black soil surrounding the Nile was also great for farming. Because of the Nile, the ancient Egyptians were able to enjoy a high standard of living and relatively peaceful existence in comparison to other ancient civilizations. So that was page 1. Page 2, as you read that, I read it to you, and I'd like you to try to read it yourself. If not, you can rewind and listen. You're going to read and take notes on what you're reading. So what were the gifts of the Nile? What are the locations? What are the natural barriers? Then you are going to draw a picture that represents the gifts of the Nile, the location, and the natural barriers. And you'll cut these out and save them in a little bit. Then you're going to write about the gifts on one of these line sheets, the location on another, and the barriers on the third. And you'll use your notes to write those out, like nice, neat sentences. And then cut them out and save them, because you're going to follow these directions to make a foldable. So it says construction paper, but it's okay if you use just a regular piece of paper. I'm not picky. Just something that you can fold in half and open up like a little book. And here's an example. So it'll be easier for me to explain with you looking at it. You're going to fold a piece of paper in half, long ways. So have you ever heard of hamburger hot dog? Think of a hamburger bun. Hamburger buns are round and small, where hot dog buns are long. So you're going to make a hot dog fold, nice and long. And then you're going to cut the front flap in two. So you have 3 sections. And you're going to paste your picture for the gifts of the Nile at the top, then your natural barriers, then your location at the bottom. Then you're going to open up your hot dog, and on the inside you will put your notes for the gifts, the natural barriers, and the location. So then when you close it, you can just flip one flap at a time to see your notes. And you will just send me a little picture of what you did. And that will be your Elaborate assignment. Pretty cool. So I will put that link in a second. And also on Friday, you are going to reflect. So how do you feel about your progress with learning about the Nile River? And what is one thing that you can take away from this lesson? So to receive credit for a frog, I need you to complete the explain, elaborate, and express sections in full. So explain is telling me the 5 facts from page 4, hint again. Elaborate is your foldable, and express is telling me one thing that you can take away from the lesson. You do those 3 things, you get a frog in the pond. If you have any questions, just let me know. Have a great week, guys.